Okay, you're a dairyman. First of all, thanks for coming in. To the department, my first question is, we went to Europe, Tim and Paul and Jackie and myself, and we met the Commissioner. It's interesting listening to you, Ted, there, what you said in relation to that someone from housing and yourself was talking to the officials in Europe about the different qualities of water. The vibe we got from the Commissioner, and I'm just wondering, do you get this vibe, was that basically Holland were going to be losing theirs, Denmark was 10 above us, and that when it comes for renewing the derogation, that other countries, he couldn't basically see us being in a position that other countries would support us. And then it's interesting to hear, Ted, you saying that it's actually the Commission that will be making the decision. Who is it, do you know, that makes this decision?
So the process is very clear that the directive allows a member state by law to apply for a derogation. We then require effectively a proposal in relation to an implementing decision from the Commission services and support from all member states in terms of that.
So it has to be supported by the other member states?
Yes, it does, by QMV.
Right, so
but it has always been thus.
So he was factually correct in what he said, so?
Yeah, right. We are dependent on it.
Okay. To Chagas, Frank, in relation to the guys that's in derogation, would ye support that they would get TAMS grant for extra slurry storage?
Look, absolutely, extra slurry storage I think is very important. The situation is, as I'm sure my colleagues here will outline, is that getting TAMS support for complying with the regulation, you can't get that, but if you're going beyond the regulation, in other words, beyond what's the minimum required in your farm, you can actually get that TAMS grant, and I think that is a very important support to farmers. And look, it's one of the things we outlined in our statement that we feel is going to be critical.
Okay, and is the department bill?
There's no preclusion on eligibility under derogation for grant aid for storage.
Right.
The issue is that if you have inadequate, as the director has said, storage under state aid rules, we're not permissible to grant aid to bring somebody up to what is the legal minimum requirement. That's been the case, and it applies under state aid to all sectors, not just agriculture.
They're entitled to get storage for soiled water, am I correct in that?
Where we've changed the rules in terms of soiled water, etc., yes, is the answer in terms of eligibility.
Yeah. In relation to, there's 4 metrics being used in water quality. And what I can't get my head around is that if you go down on one of them, you're gone. Is there any way of changing those metrics? And can you explain to me how I come from, there's a river near me, it's in Ballymoe, it goes into Ballymoe, and it's Islands River, and it's one of the most pristine in Ireland, and it's still a non-derogation area. How does that work?
So I think just, so the association that just because you don't have derogation in the farming that area that you have pristine or non-pristine would be an incorrect presentation of that. We know of areas that are reaching good status, and there can be plenty of derogation farming in that area. We know that areas...
But the red map shows you, if there's a red map over it, if you're in the area of the red map...
Sorry, you're saying that it doesn't allow. So there are 2 conditions that really were, I suppose, brought up in terms of it. I'd leave it to Ted or Leanne in relation to the specifics of it. But broadly speaking, the pressures that are in agriculture are nitrates and phosphorus, and they don't necessarily occur in the same areas, okay? And phosphorus can be just as common an issue with low intensity farming and quite low intensity farming, which would have triggered, I suppose, the failures under the 4 criteria. So we've never, I suppose, we've been very open in terms of that there's areas like this talk about Leitrim, for example, and its inclusion in one derogation farmer. It's predominantly because of phosphorus, and it failed the criteria in relation to it.
Is phosphorus, though, connected to maybe other things as well? Maybe would it be connected to sewage treatment plants?
Yeah, so nitrate is a bigger issue of agriculture. Phosphorus is a combination of agriculture.
So does a
septic
farmer
tanks.
then, yeah, but the question I'm asking, does a farmer, and actually that farmer is out of derogation, we were on farm last week in Leitrim, the one that's in the whole county, but has that farmer, is a farmer then in the areas where phosphorus is at a disadvantage, because we cannot pinpoint whether it's the agriculture or maybe sewage treatment plants, but they are going to live at the penalty of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, under the Water Framework Directive, what the EPA are doing, they're using what's called the source load apportionment model, which is able to distinguish what's coming from agriculture, what's coming from urban wastewater. And one of their documents, the Catchments of Concern document, for instance, is able to pinpoint, in a model, of course, there's inaccuracies in it, but it's a best estimate that we have at the
My
minute.
understanding, though, on
What's
phosphorus, and sorry for interrupting you, is that, you know, you cannot distinguish one or the other where it's from, other than getting the number of cows that's or cattle that's in an area and doing this model as they allegedly do.
Look, as I've said, there's inaccuracies in a model in terms of it's never going to be 100%, but it's a very good estimate of what we have, and the EPA are very confident that they can distinguish what's coming from urban wastewater, what's coming from agriculture. That Catchments of Concern document showed, I think it was 12 different catchments. One of them was specifically for urban wastewater. The rest had agriculture at about 80%, with the remaining 20% of other, which some of that phosphorus is coming from urban wastewater, but a lot of it's also coming from agriculture.
Okay. Frank, have ye done any research on areas that the EPA have been working to check out the validity? Like these models, I'm sick of models all my life, listening about a model, how we'll do something, and then maybe 5 years later or 10 years later, find that that model wasn't an accurate model to be working on. But at the end of the day, it's farmers here that's at risk of all of this. Are ye looking at, I know that I think you were involved in down near Tim or wherever, and it actually produced good results. Have you looked at any of the phosphorus side of it as well to see is this accurate, or is the modelling, like, have you done research with your people?
So, Deputy, we have looked a lot of research on water quality over the years. The particular programme that you refer to there with Senator Lombard is the catchments programme, and the function of that, it's 6 catchments around the country which are very intensively monitored to look at the effects on water quality, the effects of agriculture on water quality in those catchments. And they are, some of them are, like there's one down in Timoleague, there's some on heavily farmed areas in Wexford and Louth, but there are also some on more heavy land. There's one over in Mayo, isn't there? Bellenrobe. So look, we have information on a variety of soil types, and I suppose the key finding from the catchments, like, it's not, the EPA run the National Monitoring Programme, it's not trying to duplicate that, but it's trying to understand what might be happening within agricultural within farms that impacts on water quality. And it shows, you know, a huge effect of soil type, a huge effect of weather, and obviously a big effect of farming practice, the type of farming, whether it's tillage or livestock, and the intensity of livestock on water. So it's not simple as saying the higher the stocking rate, the greater the impact you'll have on water quality. You have to take land type into account, and you have to take, I suppose, how you're farming that land into account. I don't know whether, Pat, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. You would have to say in general that nitrogen is a problem in free draining soils. Phosphorus is a problem in heavy soils where you get runoff. And you can get runoff even at very low stocking rate with phosphorus on heavy soils. But as I said, nitrogen is a problem on free draining soils, phosphorus is a problem on heavy soils with runoff. Whereas nitrogen just goes down through the ground and into the waterways that way.
Back to the, Bill, In the last week, am I correct in saying, is this a proposal where and I think it was based on Teagasc figures, that the bullock over a year old, or bull win, whatever you want to, the male animal, is going to 61. The beef sector is going to have an 8.5%. Say someone that's dealing that'll be tight on nitrates, they're going to have about an 8.5% change in their stocking rate if that figure comes in. Isn't that fair to say?
So I suppose where we come in terms of as through the Walker stakeholder group, and we had everybody involved in that, there was a request for updated information which we asked Teagasc to do in relation to the excretion factors. And that would have been something that came out on the dairy side as well in terms of banding, as an example, let's say. So it was simply updating. And we have regularly tried to update those tables since 2006 in terms of the best available science. And the best available science was identifying the excretion factor for calves needed to go down, not to 3 months old, and that's the recommendation, but similar to 1 to 2 year old had to go up. And the question that was available is, should that be one figure for male and female, or should it be a separate female and a male figure? And the general agreement from everybody around the table was that it should reflect the best available science, which determines that, exactly as you've said, the male 1 to 2 year old should increase to 61 and the female will go down to 55. And that's what the proposal has come from the group and has gone forward into the appropriate assessment process in terms of how it applies to farms. So we would regularly update those tables based on what is the best available science, whether it's nutrient content, which was done before, whether it was of slurry, whether it's the dairy banding and excretion figures for those, whether it's the calf or whether it's the 1 to 2. And that's the only thing we can give certainty to farmers, is the confidence to say, look, this is the most up-to-date material we can use.
There's only one thing I'd say is that every week now, or every few months, we're getting some bit of different information out, and when I'm not disagreeing with the information, farmers don't know where to go, because for the simple reason, if you were a beef, if you're taken from the dairy herd and you were reared in calf to beef and you were buying all male animals, you're going to be cut 8% now, and you're last week you were at, say, you're at 170, but your animal is going to 61 if this comes in. So you're going to be, in every 100 animals, you're going to be down 8. That's what you'll be down. Simple as that. That's a change to any farmer, no matter how you go. Then you'll get the nitrates or fertilizer is another change. You've banded another change. It's constantly over the last while that why can't we give a system that, say, for cap from, at least we know what cap from 2020, what was last year, 2023 or 2023 to 2028, we know what it is. But at the moment, on be it excretion out of cows and be it movement of slurry, be it a bullock now, it's changed for the farmers that's at it. And this keeps constantly changing. And farmers cannot keep adapting to that type of a scenario. You want to have a clear road for, if you want to keep, say, enthusiasm, or to keep, like, if you had a farmer anywhere that was rearing 100 bullocks, and there's a young fella or a young girl you're trying to get them to take over, and you tell them, well, now this change is going to leave us back to 92. That's a big difference. When are we going to stop this drip feed of information, of changes constantly? Because if it doesn't stop, it's knocking the socks out of the agricultural sector and farmers. That we need a clear path to say, well, it's 170 for the next 5 years, it's 220 for the next 5 years. Your cattle are 55 or 57 or 21 for the calf for the year. Which we can't, or you can put out X amount of fertilizer, that's not going to be changing. We cannot keep going on at the moment the way that we're every week changing something for farmers. Like, you have the nature restoration law coming in, you have different things coming in. It's constant, week in, week out. And we cannot, and farmers cannot keep accepting this crack. And I'm not personally blaming you here, but like it just won't work. Because what we're doing is we're knocking the stuffing out of a sector, and we'll actually stymie investment and we'll do harm. Have a look at the numbers. Farmers are losing, you look at the numbers in the suckler herd. Look what's happening. It's wobbling at the moment. Why? Because confidence is going out of the sector with this drip feed, drip feed, drip feed. And the same is going to happen in the dairy sector, because farmers are sick and tired of this week. It's like if you if you say I'm leaving that field for Medda, and Jesus, after a few weeks you say, well, I think you change it around. You cannot do that. And farmers aren't just robots that they can turn and twist every way. They have a system set up. They adapt the farm for it. And when can a department give a guideline for 3 years, or I think it's 5 years you need to know? Every scheme we go into, be it BIS, Eco, any of them, acres, it's 5 years. But when it comes to nitrates, when it comes to all this stuff that's going on at the moment, it's wobbling from month to month, and we cannot keep doing it. What's your reaction to that?
So I have to say, look, I would accept that there's a lot coming at farmers in terms of this space, and we all accept that. And I think I don't think anybody would challenge that reality. But equally so, I have to push back in terms of the issue of looking at nitrogen excretion figures that was initiated by the department was at the behest of stakeholders. We were asked to look at these, and we asked Teagasc as a consequence to look at this. So it wasn't us prompting, it was actually the stakeholders around the water quality group said we want the best available science to look at these, and out of that has flowed the changes that you're talking about. But I do accept there's a lot of let's say on farmers, and we have to make that as understandable as possible. But I suppose just in terms of the overall conversation here, to my mind, I'm singular in terms of focus. We have a requirement under legislation to improve water quality. We have everybody shares the necessity and ambition of securing a derogation. It behoves us all to look forward, and rather than say, look, whether we don't agree with the maps or we don't agree with this part or the other, what messages are we giving to farmers around support and working together in terms of those objectives? Because they're a twin objective, and it's not just legislation that's driving the issue of water quality. It's as much about the marketplace and sustainability that we hear from the industry in terms of, we just came from a meeting with industry, and it's the same message. The marketplace is demanding sustainability. And the way I describe it to farmers, because it's a difficult thing to describe them, is there's a hierarchy of food. If you're short of food, its availability is the only judgment that you take in relation to food. Once that's achieved, the next standard, however, is achieving food safety as a standard in terms of you want to have safety and confidence in the food that you're eating. Beyond when you've met that standard, and Irish food has met that, it's all about the sustainability message in terms of the marketplace. And the longer term, to my view, will be food and health and how that it is. So that's what the marketplace is expecting, and not just regulation in relation to it. And I think we just collectively have to look forward in terms of saying, how do we work together constructively to improve water quality, which has the positive knock-on in terms of delivery on both the Nitrates Directive and Water Framework, but at the same time gives us a good standing in relation to arguing coherently for a continuation of the derogation in this country. And I think we all have that challenge.
Well, I think